What happened? What did I do? I got a job as an IT. Oh, congratulations. That's not what I wanted, but. Oh. All right. Good evening. Let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I hope everybody saw my message about homework. Still, the date is next Tuesday, which whatever I extended it to. I went back and rechecked. Actually, I was correct. I mean, there was no need for extension, but that's okay. I will keep it extended. I mean, today what we are going to study, you should be able to do your homework from whatever we ended on Saturday. But since I have extended the date, so I'm going to keep it extended, so don't worry about it. But again, all the activities that we covered by Saturday should be are enough for your homework. I thought there were some Ajax requests or something, but I looked at the homework. It doesn't look like you have to make any Ajax requests. It's just images, so we should be good. But again, homework is still due next Tuesday, so I'll keep the same date. All right. Um, Before we start on the React part, how are you guys feeling about React? Confusing? Hmm? Let's do a. I'm gonna do a quick festify before I start today's lesson. Come on. All right. So again, 5 is you completely understand it. I don't expect anybody to be 5, but if there is, that would be helpful. Um, but I want to see where do you guys land? Which range are you guys on it? Okay. All right. 4. That's good. 4. Oh, okay. 2s, 3s, 3, 3, 3, 2, 4. Okay. Wow. 2s, 3. There are quite a more 4s, I think, before any lesson. Okay. So 2, I need more practice and examples. Um, is it so for the people who are saying 2? Is it something that the activities are lacking, or is it just you need to do some more practice? Practice. Okay. Josh.
Yeah, practice is none of it's clicking for me at all. Like,
Okay. All right. What about from the concept perspective? We covered the last class. We covered properties and state. I know it's kind of a little bit tricky, but that's kind of like the cornerstone of React. You cannot write a React application if you don't know what props and states are. So, is there confusion about? Did you guys kind of go back and review the concepts, or didn't get a chance? You did a little bit. Okay. Any questions that I can clarify? Because again, today, whatever we are going to cover, it's going to assume that we covered state, so we're going to look how to use state more. Okay, props. So those are kind of assumptions. But if there are any questions, I can clarify before we move on. this would be a good time because again, I mean, each lesson, as I said, the next lesson is based on the previous one. So whatever we are going to cover, we're going to cover forms. We are going to cover a little more about state. We're going to cover how do we make AJAX requests from our React apps. And then most importantly, today we are going to cover how do we route to different pages in our React app. Okay, but all of that is based on our understanding about properties, states, event handling, um, list and keys. Okay, forms. I'm going to cover today forms. So forms understanding is based on the state as well. So any questions that you guys have that I can clarify about anything? When you go while reviewing, you were like, okay, this sounds confusing, or I'm not sure what's going on over here. Is that kind of, is there something that came across? No? Okay. Again, I understand if, I don't want to ask a question, but again, I would highly recommend, the documentation for React is really good. Um, this is a really good starting point, just the React documentation. I'm trying to do my best. I'm trying to follow the examples that they have so that if you, once you guys go back and review, you can kind of relate to what's going on. Okay. There are free courses, Pluralsight or Codecamp, but first I would recommend, take a look at the documentation first. Look at the examples that they have over here. Again, these 12 topics that are on the top over here, main concepts, when it comes to understanding from the concept wise, I'm not saying that you guys should have like a good professional experience. Of course, once you're going to work on a product at a company, then you will understand what how this works in real world. But from the concept wise, from book wise or from reading wise, you guys should be really well versed in all of these 12 topics, at least. Okay. Again, being well versed in these 12 topics does not, I will assure, does not make you stand apart from, I mean, anybody else. Any junior React developer, they all should be knowing this. So a lot of people already are kind of pretty, I mean, they have good understanding. They understand what state does, what is the difference between state and props, how do you handle events in React. Those are kind of common things. These are absolutely necessary for you to know if you want to create a simple React app. Okay, so these are the concepts that you should be at least extremely familiar. You guys should know each one of all these 12 topics. Today we are going to cover 7 conditional rendering. We'll cover number 9. Number 9, 10, 10-ish. 11 and 12, I'm going to leave those out for you guys. Once you guys are clear on until 10, then only 11 and 12 are going to make sense. But I would highly recommend all these 12 topics. You guys should know what each of them do and how do you write code for each one of them. Okay, so today is a class we are going to end our coverage for main concepts. We're going to cover the main concept, and by the end of today's class, we should have covered all of them. Okay, starting Thursday and the whole of next week. Every few months, 6 months, every time I teach this course, there's a new edition in React. Okay. Again, it's not usually part of the syllabus, but I try to make sure that I introduce to the students at least what is the new part. Okay. You might not find it helpful. You might not find yourself using in your projects, but it is always good to know what the new tools or new coding or new functions that React has added. Okay, after graduating, it is important that if you guys are being in the React developer, you guys should be familiar with every time they add something, you should know what's going on. Okay, so those are some of the new things that I would like to talk after today. Especially some of these concepts. The first one would be hooks. I'm going to talk about hooks. Again, this is absolutely new. Anybody who has graduated before you would have, I have not never taught hooks before this. Okay, and the reason is this is kind of new addition to React, so you guys are going to at least get a flavor. I don't know if you guys are going to understand. The thing is, you need to have good understanding about these concepts before you can even understand this. But again, I want to do my part. At least I want you guys to subconsciously have these words in your mind, even though I don't know if you will understand or not. I hope you do. I'm going to use the same examples that we had done, and I'm going to try to make sure that something comes across. But at least what will happen is you guys will know. If you go and interview somebody, says, "Hey, do you know what hooks are in React?" You'll be like, "Okay, yeah, you know, my instructor was blabbering about it, so I kind of got something out of it. So you can at least say something about it. Okay. Versus hooks, I don't know. I don't know what hooks are in React. Okay. So we'll cover some of this. Um, there is. You guys must have heard of Redux with React. So again, not part of the course, not absolutely necessary, but I want to make sure that you guys at least have a understanding, or at least know from okay, there is something called Redux, and what is the use of Redux, at least a definition. Okay, so we'll be covering those starting Thursday until the whole of next week. Some of those newer concepts, but today, as I said, we are going to my we're going to complete all of these the basic concepts, the main concepts. So whatever, as soon as we stop today, you guys have basically completed React as well, at least the main concept. So you guys should be able to create React apps, work on your projects and everything. Everything after this is kind of new and upcoming, optional. You don't have to use any of those things, or you don't have to know if you want to make a React app, though. Honestly, but again, it's good knowledge, and it will always give you an upper hand if you are interviewing and somebody, because as I said, these are the concepts that every React developer should know. So it's not anything new that kind of sets you apart. But some of the newer ones, these are the things that will definitely set you apart. Okay? All right. So the first topic is forms. All right. What are forms? These are our old HTML forms. Okay. React doesn't do. React has the same thing. We are going to look at the same tags over here. The form tag. We'll look at the labels, input, and everything. The only difference between forms is in React is um, you guys remember forms are a little bit different. They are different as in that they have their own. When you type in something in a form, right? Remember, if you have a text box on the screen and you type something in the text box, we use jQuery to capture each keystroke, right? You can capture those keystroke, console log it, and everything that you type in, you can see on your console logs. Okay? So, what is happening behind the scene? If you understood state, that is exactly what is happening. If you remember the state, what is happening is there's a state, each form has their own internal state. So HTML forms by default have their own state, and that's how they're able to like recognize your keystrokes and then kind of keep adding the previous keystroke that you have. For example, if you're typing A, B, C, and D, yeah, at first it will show you A, then AB, then ABC, then ABCDE, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what is happening is those forms, they have their own state. Okay, now React also has its state, and that's where the clash comes in. So there are some default state that HTML forms comes with, and then there's a React state. So what React says is, if you're going to use forms in my application, in a React application, you need to take away that state from the forms. You have to take the state away from the forms. Okay, let React control that state. Okay, so there are two states. HTML forms have their own built-in states, okay, and then React states that we looked on Saturday. Okay, when you're using forms in React, React recommends that you actually take the state that comes built in with HTML, take it away from HTML. Don't let HTML forms handle states. Okay, let React do it. All right. Once that is achieved, it is called control components. Control components are components that are completely 100% controlled by React. All the state management, everything is controlled by React. Those components are called control components. So if you're using forms and you are not giving the power of state to React, oh, oh, is that you? I was like, what's going on? So those are called uncontrolled components. Okay. As like if you see on this over here, this code, this is plain HTML. If you use exactly the same way in React, it is not a control component. Why? Because HTML form is going to maintain its own state, and then your React component is going to have its own state. Okay, we'll see. We'll talk about. I'll show you the code. How do you take that state away and make sure that React is handling that? But the concept is control components. Control components are components whose state is 100% controlled by React. Okay, and these control components. This concept comes more apparent when you use HTML forms. Okay, within HTML form, elements like input, text area, select, all of these have their own state. Okay, these tags in HTML come built in with a state of their own. When you use them in React, we're going to take away that state from these tags and give it to React. Okay, once we do that, these are called control components. Why control? Because it is 100% controlled by React now. Okay, all state management, whatever is happening, it is controlled by React. Okay, or as React says, a single source of truth. Okay, React says the component that is built in React should be the single source of truth, meaning that the state, everything should be controlled by the React component and not by HTML, not by these tags or any built-in components that come into it. Okay. So in our case, HTML forms are the only ones that are kind of a little bit uncontrolled because they come up with their own state built in. All right. Usually in our HTML and JavaScript apps, that's fine, but React doesn't like it. The states are clashing, so that's why they are saying we're going to take away the state from these tags and we are going to give it to React. And how do we update the state in React? We use the function called setState. That's what they're saying over here. Okay, so any update to the state of these components has to be done through setState, which is a React function and should not be done on its own. Okay, any questions on this before we see how forms are? How do we take that state from forms and give it to React? All right, so those are called control components. So in our React app, when we create forms, we want to make sure that all of those are control components. Basically, the state is handled by React and nobody else. Okay. All right. So let's see. I will write the code for all of these. Okay. All right, so my first app is called Forms Demo. A simple app that I created using Create React app. I'm going to create a form component inside it, and then we'll add the HTML code that we kind of saw in the documentation. Okay, we'll create a simple form. You can also start doing this. Use the form tag though. So the first thing I will do is make sure this is running. So let's see, forms demo. Okay. All right, so looks like this is working. So we'll go ahead and create our component. So let's call it form. I'll create 3 files. Form.css, form.test.js, and then our JavaScript file, form.js. Okay. Now the first thing is we are going to be using state in the form component. So is it going to be a functional component or a class component? Any idea? Class component, right? Whenever you are using state, it has to be a class component, right? For now, we'll look at some concepts. These are some new things that React has introduced, where it allows you to use state and functional components. But before this, the only way to use a state is to have a class component. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and create a class component. So we'll import React, and then we will also import the component module from React. Okay, I'm going to import my CSS. Okay, so the syntax is class form extends component, and there's my class component. Okay, so if you see the syntax, if it looks a little bit different, but I hope you guys can understand there are two ways. Either you can do React dot component. Okay, this way you don't need this. Basically, you are saying go into the React module and pull out the component from it. Okay, or you can just import it on the top, the component module, then you don't need the React dot. Okay, it's more about the preference, what you prefer. Okay, um, so the first method, the more important method, the lifecycle method is render. So we will call the render method. Okay, and render method is going to return something, JSX. For now, we will just put a div tag. And let's say this is from form. Okay, same as function component, we're going to export our form out of it. Okay. Next thing is we are going to go to our app, and then we're going to import this form. I'll keep this div here. Don't need this. We will import our form module. So form, import form from. Oh, I didn't create a component. Oh, I did not. So let me fix that. Components. And then I'm going to move components inside it. There we go. Okay. We will render our form component. Looks like it is running. Let's get back over here. All right. So the text shows up. This means my form component is working. All right. So I was able to successfully create a class component. Again, why? Because I'm going to be using state. All right. So let's go ahead and now add some form to our form component. All right. So we'll use our simple form tag from HTML. Okay. We'll use the input tag. All right. I don't need to type in anything over here, so I will just finish this here. Okay. We will go ahead and set some attributes. Type is going to be text. Okay. Let's give it a name. We'll call it first name. So this will be an input box where you can type in a name. Okay. Just put a placeholder so that we can see what this represents. First name. Okay, simple input box in a form. Go back to a browser and it shows up over here. Okay, so this is my input box. Let's go ahead and next thing we'll do is we'll create a state. Okay. In the previous class, I was using the constructor. You can use the constructor, or the other way was to just have state like this in your example. So I'm gonna use this one so that if you're doing your activity and you come across this syntax, it's not confusing. Okay, so we'll create a state and we'll create a state on our first name. Okay, right now it's going to be empty and we are going to update our state from here. Okay, our goal would be for whenever the user types in something, it shows up on the screen. For example, if I type in something over here, the same text shows up on a label over here. That's what we are trying to do. Okay. Um, okay. And all right. So remember, in our jQuery, what were we doing? We were trying to capture whatever the user types in, right? We are passing an event. We need the handle input change event from jQuery. Remember that? So in that way, you can capture every single thing that is typed in, and that's exactly what we will do over here. So we will use our handle input change, and then capture every single text, every single letter that is typed in. Okay. Um, so let's go ahead and create a function, and we'll call it handle input change. Again, this method you can name anything you want. All right, this method will be called in the event called on change over here. Okay, right now it's empty. We'll go and complete it, but this has to be called on change because every time you type in something, this event will be fired. We'll go ahead and complete that function on the top. So let's go ahead and call it handle input change. Okay, I'm going to use the arrow function. It's going to get an event, so we'll call it E, single parameter, so I don't need to put a parentheses across. Okay, and then we will simply we're going to console log something so that we can see what's coming in the event. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this event on your on change. Now remember, I was talking about the syntax, so I'm going to call a function on my on change. I'm going to pass an event, and within that function is going to be a wrapper, and it's going to call my this dot handle input change function over here. Okay, so it's going to be anonymous function. I'm going to pass a single argument E, which is event, and then I'm going to use my arrow function and call the function over here. This will be called this dot handle input change, and I'm going to pass in this event to this. Okay, now what is going to happen? Every time you type in something, this event gets fired. What happens in this event? It's going to go ahead and call this function. Okay, right now it doesn't do anything, and we'll go ahead and do a console log. For now, simply do let's say handle input change fire. Let's call this. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and see if this works. We'll go back over here. Inspect. Go to our console. Type in something. You see, every time I type in something, our handle input change is being fired. All right. Let me clear this. And then it says handle input change, and the number keeps going up 10 because those are the characters that I have typed in. Okay. So far, again, it's still a little bit JavaScript and jQuery, same concept over here. Every time we type in something, we are firing this event, and on this event, you're calling this function. Okay, and on this function, we are just console logging whatever is happening. Okay, now if you go back to the documentation, let's take a look at the events, they have the same thing. They're doing the exact same thing over here. I want to show you what are they console logging. So that in the event, that is also that the same variable that we have, they have a property called value, and they also have a property called name. So let's go ahead and console log those two properties. So it's going to be, in our case, we are calling it E. So it's going to be e.target.value and e.target.name. Okay. So let's go ahead and first console log that and then see what happens every single time we. So it's going to be e.target, okay, and then dot value. So let's go back to our app. Let me clear this. So I type in Q shows up, W E R T Y. Okay. So remember the first property in your event, the variable E that is being passed in, they have a property called target, and your target has a property called value. If you want to capture anything, this is how you do it. Okay. Now e.target.value is a React specific object. All right. I don't want to get too technical, but React has a wrapper around JavaScript events. They have their own wrapper class. It's called synthetic events. If you look at the documentation, if you ever get that deep, they have all the definition over here, what it actually does. I think it's under advanced. No, it's under API reference. It's called synthetic event. This is the one. Take a note of it. If you get a chance, go through it and read it. So basically, they have created this module that kind of wraps over JavaScript functions, JavaScript events. Okay, so this e.target.value is coming from them. Okay, and they are saying when you use this property, you are going to get whatever is being typed in your box over here. Okay, so every letter that I type in comes in to your e.target.value. Okay. What you can also do is you can console log just e.target if you want to see what is coming inside this object. Let's see if this works. Let's go ahead and clear this. Q, W, R. Okay. Do you see what is coming in event.target? Event.target gives you the whole input text, the input element over here, the HTML element. Okay, that's what event e.target is giving you. E.target.value is giving the value that is being typed into that box. Event.target object is giving you the whole thing. Now, if I want to extract the name out of it, what do I have to do? I would just say e.target.name, and this is going to give me the name attribute. Console. Oh. Thank you. Okay, let's type in Q. So you will see the first is coming from event e.target.value. The second is coming from e.target.name. And how do I know why to use name? Because it's the attribute over here on line number 3. Okay, if you have a placeholder, you can do dot placeholder. You will get the value for placeholder. Okay, that's how you extract values from your event. Okay, remember e.target is the main object. Within that object, value is given. All right, you cannot control the value thing. Okay, value is coming from React, and React is saying if you use the target, the value property over here, I'm going to give you whatever you are typing into that input box. Okay, after that, name, placeholder are coming from whatever you have in your input over here. Okay, whatever attributes that you use over here, they are going to come as the same one-on-one mapping. So type is going to come over here. You can use name, you can use placeholder. You can't use anything else because it's not there. Okay, if you add another attribute, it's going to come over there. Okay, by default, value is always present on your e.target. when you're using input box. Okay? Any questions so far before we move on to the actual stuff? Unfortunately, this is not even, if you see, this is actually just still our JavaScript concepts, right? On change, jQuery has that. On change, you'll find an event. This is a function that gets called. These are the values that are inside that events. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay. Now, how is every time I type in something over here, like R, you see, it's capturing every single one. It kind of appends my next letter to my previous word. Okay, how is this happening? If you remember our count example from our state, we were saying every time an event happens, every time something happens on my page, go back and re-render the page and update my state. Okay, I don't know if you guys go back and look at that example. In our set state, we had our count variable, and we were saying this dot state dot count plus 1 is equal to count. Okay, so I was taking the previous number from my state count and then adding it up and then creating a new value for the count. This is exactly the same thing that is going on. It looks at the previous one and adds a new character to it. It looks at the previous one, adds a new character to it. So behind the scene, input has its own state. It's calculating, it's using its own state, and then coming up with these new values. Okay, right now this is an uncontrolled component because we are not using the state from React. And how do I know we are not using the state from React? Because I declared the state on the top as first name, but I'm not using this anywhere. Okay, if I remove this code still works. This tells me that the state is still being controlled by input tag over here. Okay, I'm not using my own state. So for this to be a control component, the value should be coming from this. Okay, input form should not be reading its own value, should not be reading the next value, should not be coming to this new value. Basically what it is doing is kind of roughly, it's saying value is equal to, let's say, form dot state. Of course, this variable does not exist, but just to give you a concept, it is saying value plus equal to. So it takes the previous words that you have typed in. Let's suppose I typed in Q W E R. If I type in T, it goes and looks at the previous state and then adds this next letter to this. So the new state becomes Q E R T. Okay, something like that. But basically the concept is that input has its own state, and that's how it's able to come up with that new value. Okay, but we don't want input to do that. We want the value to come from our state. And how does it come from our state? This is our state. So it should be reading, it should be saying this dot state dot first name should be the value. Okay, that's what it means. So right now it's uncontrolled. For example, what I mean is I'm going to write the attribute value. Okay, I'm going to override it. I'm going to say, oh no, don't read your own value, but read the value from where? From the state. And how do I read it from the state? This dot state dot first name. Now I have taken the control from my input tag. It's taken the control of the state where it was calculating the value on its own. I have taken that control from it and I have said, no, don't read the value from your own state. Get the value from the state from the React. Okay, this is how you make your uncontrolled component a control component. Now, it's not going to work right now because I'm not setting the state. I still need to set the state every time this happens, but this is the first step. Okay, now what am I saying? I'm saying the value of the attribute value, read it from the state, do not read it from your own state. If you remove this line, where is the value coming from? It's coming from the internal state of this input tag. Okay, if you put in this value over here, what are you saying? Read the value from this state, from the React state. Okay, basically you're going. I have a state declared on the top, and I'm saying read it from this state. Do not read it from your own internal state. All right. Any questions? Still not complete because I'm telling it to read it from the React state, but I'm not updating the state, right? How do I update the state? I have to use the set state method. So if you do not see a set state method in your stateful component, this means the state is not being, basically not being updated, okay? If you see this variable, this dot state something, this means it's being read, but it's not being updated. Okay, so I still need to use the set state method. Okay, that would be the second step. Any questions before we move on to the second step? No questions? Lost? No? This dot state, this thing? Set state? Okay, so what I was saying is if I remove this, right? Remember, if you console log, we still see a value, right? If you do e.target.value, something comes up. And what is that value? That value is everything that you type in and the previous value. For example, if you've already typed in QWER, you type in T, the new value would be the combination of this. It kind of appends to it, right? Now, where is that value coming from? That value is coming from the input tag's internal state. Okay, we don't know a lot more details about it, but what we understand is that input has its own state, and it is saying, hey, read the previous values from the state and add the new value to it. Read it from the previous state and add the new value to it. That's how it is doing it. Okay, but this is an example of an uncontrolled component, right? React does not like it. React says, no, I should be the only one who should be updating the state, and you should be reading the state from the React app and not from your own internal state. Okay, now how do we prevent that? What we do is we kind of override that attribute and we say, hey, don't read it from your own state, get the value from the React state. That's what we're saying. So the value is going to come from a state that you have declared, which is on the top over here. Okay? Now, we are not setting the state yet, so we need to go ahead and second step is set the state so that you can get the updated value. Okay? Now, where would we set the state? Every time somebody types something in. And when somebody types something in, this is the function that gets called. Right? So I need to set my state in handle input change. Okay? Can I set this state over here? Yes. Why? Because e.target.value is not going to give me, is going to go over here, read this value and give me that value. Okay? So when does render function fire? Every time something changes. All right? Every time something changes, this functions get fired. All right? So I am going to go over here. I'm going to say this dot. How do you set the state? You use the method set state. All right. Remember, you cannot assign any value to the state variable. You have to use a set state method. That is the only way to set a state in React. Okay. Remember, state is always an object. Okay. So state is always going to be an object. So if you want to set this state, you are going to pass it an object. All right. Right now, I have only one state, first name. Okay, and I'm going to set this to e dot target dot body. Okay, let's go ahead and comment this out for now. Okay, so go here, make sure this is still working. Okay. We'll verify if this is working now, but this is how you would set a state. Okay. What we can do is let's add a button, which will, once you have done this, when you click that button, what it will do is it will read the values from the state and show it in an alert box. Let's do that so that you can see what is the value that you have typed in. Or you can add a label as well, but I want to show you the submit button as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a quick button. Oops. Okay. Let's call it submit. All right. Let's add the on click function. On click, and we will follow the same strategy that is on line number 24. So we are going to pass in our event, and then we will call this method, which does not exist. So we will say this dot handle submit, and then pass in this argument. Okay, this function does not exist, so we'll go ahead and create this on the top over here. So we'll say handle submit, let's call it handle form submit. Handle form submit, declare it on the top over here, handle form submit. Okay, it's going to receive a single argument, so no need for parentheses. And it's going to be the function body. Okay. Again, do you guys remember the form submit thing? When you click the submit, what happens? The form is going to go ahead and submit itself to the server. Again, this is not the behavior that you want, so that's where we use event.prevent default. Okay, so we will use the same thing over here. We will say e.prevent default because we don't want this form to be submitting or doing something on its own. We are going to take care of the submission. Okay. For now, we will just do alert, and so that you guys can see what is in our. So we'll say hello. We'll use our template virtuals, and we will read the value from our state first. Okay. And let's go ahead and clear our state. Once somebody has submitted a button, we will clear our state here as well, which just means that resetting our state to empty string. Okay, so what happens now? You have a button. Let's say it showed up. Okay. Sorry, this is an object. Okay. Is that what you're going to say? Prevent default. Thank you. Okay. What is that? It? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it looks like my submit button is there, so that's fine. That's what I was checking. All right. So I have a button over here, which has an on-click event that calls this method. Right. Since this is a form, we have to be careful. That's why we need the prevent default because we don't want the form acting on its own. We take that capability, and once that is complete, we are going to show an alert, and the first name is going to be read from the state. Okay, if my state is working correctly, it should have whatever I have typed in over here. So, for example, if I type in a name and I submit it, it shows alert box with the name. Okay, this is how we know this is working. Why? Because it is reading that name from the state. When you click OK, it disappears. Okay, it cleared the state. All right, you see the name also disappeared from my input box. Why? Because I went over here and I said, oh, clear out the state. As soon as the state changes, anything that is in the state changes, what happens? Your render function fires again, your page is rendered again. All right, so that's why the value of this is set to empty. Okay, so just to reiterate two things over here. The first thing is we are overriding the value. We are taking the control from our form component, from our input tag. We are giving the control to our React app. Okay, so this is now a control component. If you don't have this, it is an uncontrolled components. Unintentionally, you have two states now. You have a state from your input tag, and then you have your own React state which you have declared on the top. Okay, that's not what we want. Yes.
Just noticing the two functions we've got there. One has the this.yaml input, and that the curly braces, and the other one does not. Does that matter?
It does. So this is how it should be. Well, right now these are not actually returning anything, so that's why it was working. But this way, it just says I have a single line. You don't need a curly braces. Okay, it was redundant. I was going to fix that. Thank you. All right. Sometimes I do miss these curly braces. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm coming from Java, and then I'm like, oh, it kind of looks incomplete. Even this looks incomplete to me. I really want to put like parentheses like this, even though it's not necessary. I don't know why it looks complete to me. Right? It's like it's not. It's just like just randomly showed up. Uh, anyway, yeah, it will work. It's redundant. If you put parentheses, remember in arrow function you don't need to. It's kind of redundant. So yeah. You know what? I like the. I'm going to change this. It looks kind of complete. I don't know why. I just maybe I see a different language code. That's why. Okay. So this is how this works. Any questions on forms, control components? No. Yes. Hmm? The what? The button tag? Oh, it's button and then on click, and then you call this function over here. Okay? Yes. You can keep it inside. No, there is no purpose. Well, it matters when you have your CSS and your everything. That's when it comes. But I mean, functionality wise, this is also fine. Huh? It doesn't matter. Yeah, you can move it inside. And why does it not matter? Again, remember you have to use the event.prevent default, so that's why it's not going to affect. If you remove event.prevent default, then yes, then it's going to you'll kind of see a different behavior. You actually won't even be able to execute this line over here because form is going to submit on its own. Okay. So let's do one more thing. Let's add another input over here. So, for example, last name. So let's go ahead and create another type. Simple. This is going to be our type is text. Okay. Name. Let's call this last name. Okay. Placeholder. Okay. We want this to be a control component, of course, so we will say value is going to come from the state and last name. Of course, we don't have this, so let's go ahead and add this to our state. So we will say the last name. Okay. This should do it. All right. Everything looks fine. And then I need my on change. Okay, so I have my onChange method over here. It is also going to call the same method. Okay, so far so good. Let's see how it looks like. Let's add a quick break. Okay, that's good. First name, last name. Okay, it's going to read from the state. Let's go over here. Okay, so every time something changes, this is going to get fired. All right. Um, Now, when I type in anything in my first name, okay, what is being, what is the target dot value? What is it? Yes. Oh, let me put a better name. Okay. Okay. So it's going to be Tony, right? Everybody understand that? Right. What if I type in last name? What is the? You see what is happening? Why is it not letting me? It's literally not going to let you type anything. Right? It comes over here, it sets the state and is always setting it to the first name. Makes sense, right? Why? Because every time input change happens, what you're saying is get the value and set it to first name. How do I set it to my last name? Will this work? If I type in, you see what's happening? It's automatically filling out my last name box as well. So what is happening? Whenever you type a change, right, it comes and sets the state, takes a value, sets to the first name, and also sets to the last name. When you type in the last name, it sets to the first name and then also the last name. How do you differentiate between, is there a way to differentiate between these two? The value, both of these are coming in the value tag. How do you differentiate them? Any way to differentiate by what? By name. Okay, remember if you console out e.target, in this case, you will have a property name, and in this case, it would be first name, and in this case, it's going to be last name. Okay, so let's do this. Let's pull out those properties from our event.target. Okay, what we are trying to do is we are saying cons name is equal to e.target.name, and then pull out the value e.target.value. Okay, is there a better way to write these two lines? Yes, 6. Object destructuring. Excellent. Thank you. I feel very proud. Somebody actually remembered. All right. So we're going to use our object destruction to write the same statement in one line. So const object. We're going to say name value. Okay, is equal to e.target, and this is equivalent of the first two lines. Okay, it's going to pick up the name and assign it to name, value to value. Okay, so now I have name, I have value. Raymond, what's next? So what I would expect is easier change would be you can have two different input change events over here. Okay, one would be handle input change, let's say first name, okay, and handle input change last name. Two different methods. In each method, you would set the correct state. Okay, but again, you will have, what is going to happen, you will have two functions which are doing exactly the same thing. All right, So instead of doing this, there is a new feature. It's called computed property. Computed property. Okay. Remember this name. Syntax will look easier. But if you come across somebody asks what is computed property names, this is the feature that was added in ES6 as well. What you can do is you can not this one. Let's go over here. Okay. Let's do this. Before, let me console log name. Oh, you already guys saw this. So let me add a comment over here. So what is going to be by name when you are typing some value in the first name is going to be the label, whatever you have defined over here, right? This thing, name. When you're typing something in the last name input box, your name value is going to be last name. Okay. So what you want to do is, let me first write out this syntax. Oops. If you do name value, what is going to happen over here? If you type something in the first name input box, what is the name? It's going to be first name. Okay. This is called a computed property. This is part of ES6. What it does is it is going to look into this variable and replace it with whatever value is being assigned over here. What is the value over here? First name. So this is going to become first name. Okay. When you type in last name, this is going to be computed and this whole variable name is going to be replaced with last name. That's what this does. Okay, so what is the advantage? You don't have to write two functions within the same statement. You can go ahead and save some values. Okay, this is called computed name property. So in your set state, let's go ahead and clear this out as well. I'm going to say last name. Okay, now if you go back over here, if you type in, you see, still the same. No conflict, no interaction. Now if you submit it, oops, because we did not add our last name in our hello. So we will say this dot state dot last name. Okay, so if you type in names, click submit, you have both names over here. Okay, again, this is called, let me write it over here. So just remember computed property name, which is part of the ES6. What it does is e.target. The first time when you type something in your first input box, it's going to pull out the name from your attribute, and the attribute for first name is called first name. So it's going to pull that out over here. In this case, it's going to replace this with, so this will become first name is equal to value. Okay, when you type in the last name, your last name is going to come into this value, and this will be computed. This will be replaced with last name, and it's going to have the correct value. Okay, if you don't do this, you'll have to create two different functions, kind of handle these two states a little bit differently. All right, any questions? I think I took too much time in going over forms, but that's okay. All right, any questions? Does everybody understand forms? Okay. So let's do activity number 1, formal review, and this is from week number 20. If you did a GitLab poll, I uploaded activities for week 20. So you guys will be working on activity number 1. Okay, what activity number is similar to this one, just the variable names are different, or the inputs are different, but you have to create a form, kind of use the computer property name, make sure it is working. I will leave this example over here. Um, Let me see. Okay, so same thing when you it's going to be an uncontrolled component and you're unsolved. You have to make sure it is controlled. Let me see. Yeah, it's missing the values, so you have to add the attributes for value, name, add the event handlers. Looks like it's missing the event handlers for both of them. Um, the button is inside the form arena in this unsolved one, so just make sure you're using e.prevent default. Again, this is my example. I'm looking at the unsolved one. This is activity number one. So go ahead and complete that part. It's going to be very similar to what I just did. So same thing when you click the submit button, throw an alert. Display the username and password. Instead of first and last name, the inputs are called username and password. Clear the input fields, and that is what I did over here. Once you submit, you are clearing the values. Yes. Good. Okay, same username, then creating a React app. What is it? The screenshot? Yeah, yeah, that's the one. Thank you.
Private somebody said, I mean, you have to do it on a different day. Yeah. But you have to install the so you have to yeah, you have to install it. That's they've taken that away now.
They took it away?
Yeah, the logos now. Deprecated now. You try to do the logo.
It's until 2019. Somebody said it worked.
Yeah, it's 2020.
Oh, well, October 2019. Oh, what is your NPM version? 6.13 dot.
Yeah. So I can't even like open up Dash. If like you know, get Dash here
Git bash what?
So if you right click inside a directory, you get bash here.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't, it opens enter root. It doesn't direct you to view.
Really?
So it's like something with a relative path.
Hmm. Well, so it's 7:45. We'll take a break. We'll start back at 8 o'clock and we'll do the next activity. All right, make sure this is working. Not working? Huh? That was a lot? Oh, so funny. We'll see.
So basically, I found this thing that was saying to people believe that we got an EMRC file, but I deleted it and then it's still not working. Like on other somebody else said they just deleted the contents inside. That's what I was. Yeah, did you do it already? Did you do the homework already? Did you do this homework already? The homework that hasn't been assigned? Yeah. Sorry. You didn't put a slide in. The state is going to do well, but this is the value that the company does not there in the company. So how to fill in those stuff. So the first thing is run this. If it runs up, you will see that. Then you type in the that's not so long. So he's screaming about my life. You have to create a React app. What's that? Just then it's now like the last 30 minutes.
Could be my imagination, but it seems like with the new mic, there's like a lot of feedback.
Oh,
Is
really?
it because it's this mic is on too?
No, this is off.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Maybe I just had it too close, so I moved it down, so we'll see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, so hopefully that's what it is. Yeah, I don't have anything. Let me make sure. Yeah, that's off. Um, volume over here is off. Yeah. The computer property. So what was what? You have to create two separate functions and then update the state in each one of them, or have kind of condition. Yeah. Yeah, but even before was the time when React wasn't there as well. So it's the ES6 and React kind of go hand in hand in timeline. So it's been there. Yeah. Or you would have to write if conditions or switch. Basically say, oh, if name is first name, then set this value. You can do that. So you can write a switch statement. Yeah. It's a square bracket. It takes the variable and replace it with the value that is inside this variable. What is the value inside this name variable that we declared over here? It's going to be first name or it's going to be last name, so it replaces it with this. Yeah, it's just a variable. It just because it's inside an object, that's why it needs square bracket. Otherwise, think of this as a variable. That's value gets replaced with whatever value inside it. And value is over here. E.target.name is going to be here, which is going to be either first name or last name. So this gets replaced with first name. So it's going to render like this. So it's going to be first name and whatever the value of the first name is, Tony. That's what this will eventually render as. What did he do? The global install? The global npmg? That didn't work? All right. Let's look at the next active. Any questions on this one? It's very similar to what I solved. You guys have any questions? Okay. All right. So the next activity is we are going to look at how do we make AJAX calls from React. Okay, it's important because when we get to the project, you will be creating your node servers, you will be having your APIs, and you're going to be making AJAX calls from your React app. So that's what we're going to look at this first. Okay, so the small project that I'm going to be doing is we are going to use our Giphy API. Okay, and then we're going to pull up some images from that API. Okay. It's going to be a simple app. So what my target is, I have designed my app. So I'm going to have a input box over here where you can type in something that is going to go and search the Giphy API. Okay. You can type in a search term, and then I need a search button. Okay, and then once the results come back, I'm going to show the images at the bottom. That's all. Okay, so these are all dynamic. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into components. Before I break this down into components, um, let's talk about state. Okay, so how many places? Let's suppose I break this down into. I'm going to make one component of this, and then this is going to be my other component. All right, makes sense. So I have my search form. I'm calling it search form. Why? Because it has a input box and a search button, so it's kind of like a form. And this is my result grid. All right, or result list. We'll keep it simple. All right. So everybody sees two components. All right. So which of these are going to have state? Is the first one going to have a state? Does this require state or not? Yes, right? Why? Because I'm inputting something, I'm doing something, and it's a form. I need some kind of a state to maintain that whatever I'm searching over here. Okay. What about this second component? Do I need a state over here? Huh? Results. Yeah. So every time I'm going to be updating my component. So if you search something else, I want to clear this up and then put my results again over here. Huh? You do it what? Override what? Okay, so this component is separate and this component is separate. How do I pass in the data inside it? With props. Okay, so I can uh, take this, whatever the data that comes in, and I can pass into this using props. Okay, so what is going to happen every time this page renders, every time we search something, it is going to go ahead and um, send a props over here. Okay, does it make sense? All right, so here's one more thing before we move on. Okay, so right now I just have like two components. So you will see some design pattern that comes with React is, and if you guys look at the documentation so that you guys know which two parts I'm talking about. Um, this is number 10 called lifting the state up. Okay. What React suggests is that if you have state in your smaller components, try to see if you can raise the state up. What this means is see if you can combine state into a single component, and all of your components are just using properties. Okay, this means that you raise the state up to a higher component. For example, this tree is going to look like I'm going to have a app, okay, and then I'm going to have my search form, okay, and then I'm going to have my results, which has to be a child of this one. Why does it have to be a child? Because I'm using props, right? And props are only passed from your parent to child, right? If this was a sibling, you cannot pass it. All right. So what React's design pattern kind of suggests is what would it take for this structure to become something like this. If you have app and then you have search form, okay, and then you have results, okay. Right now it's not possible, right, because my state is in my search form, right. It gets the data, it does the search, and it has to pass in something to my results. Okay, this is where the concept of lifting up the state comes in. So what React suggests is try to, right now we just have two components, so it's not as complicated. But when you have a lot more component, you try to make sure that your state, everything resides on a parent component and it does all the state work. Okay, and then it passes the data to its child components. The advantage of this is you are maintaining the state at one position, all right, at only one place. This is the only component that is going to create, that is going to have state, and that is going to modify the state, all right. You want to keep your components, I won't say minimum with state, but you want them to be controlled by a single one which is controlling the state. All right. You will see if you don't do this, state management becomes a real problem. All right. For example, this is going to have its own state. This form has its own state. How do you sync both of them up? It kind of becomes a problem. Okay. For this, what React suggests is you lift up the state. You create a component, a parent component that maintains all the state, and then talks to its child components through props. For example, let's create a new component called search container. Okay, this component is going to have two children, search form and react form. All the state work, all the searching and everything, we are going to take the state from here and put it over here. Okay, and then we are going to pass this state down as props. Okay, now what I'm saying is wrong. You cannot pass state, right? We saw the rules. State is local to a component, right? But you can pass down variables, you can pass down data to your child forms, and they become props. Does this form know that search container is a stateful component? No, it has no idea. And that's the rule. Every component that has a state, nobody else should know that that's a stateful component. All right. Your search form is going to get some props, some properties, right? Your search form is saying, oh, I'm receiving these properties. That's what I'm going to use. Your results is going to receive properties. It has nothing to do with state. Okay. Your search container has all the state maintenance. It is doing all the state, capturing these inputs and passing them along to different components. Okay, this is a good example. It's what happens is it's small enough so that you can see how these are working, and it kind of sets you up for your projects where you're going to have a lot more components. So I want you guys to think when you are developing your components, and if you're using state in multiple components, see how you can raise the state up to a single one, and then your single component can control the state and pass in those state values to your other components. Okay, I'll show you this example. How do we do that? But that's the concept, right? We want to make sure that we have minimum components with state, like we have a one big major component that is controlling the state, and the rest of the components are using that state as properties. We'll see how do we pass those state values inside our child components. Okay. The other reason is if you have a lot more components, your state management kind of becomes very difficult, and that's where Redux comes in. Redux was created to solve these kind of issues. Now, Redux is not, I won't say not important, but it's kind of a little bit high, a little bit requires a lot more understanding of React before we can use it. We'll cover it a little bit, but that's what React Redux comes in and solves our issues for. If you have too many components with state, you will see that it becomes really difficult to manage the state. Okay, so if you're not using Redux, you're not using anything, this is a good start. First of all, try this. if your components, if you have like 5 components and you are using state in all 5 of them, there's a design pattern and this is what it is. We need to see how you can lift that state up, create a new component like a parent component and put the state over there. Okay, so for example, we are going to create a bigger component called search container, and it's going to have 2 child components, the form and results. Okay, and this is going to maintain the state and call these components. Now, my 2 components, let's suppose, are not going to require states. So what kind of component do I need to create? Functional or class? No, my last 2 are not going to use state at all. Functional. Okay. If you are not using a state, don't create a class component. Make sure you create a functional component. Okay. So let's see how it looks like in our coding. And then I'll see if there are any questions. For now, let's start with this. We're going to have 3 components. Our top parent component is going to have 2 components, the search form and a result form. Okay, so you guys, if you have a new React app, you can kind of go ahead and start doing that. So I'm going to create a folder, we'll call it components. Okay, and then I'm going to create 3 components. I'm kind of going to go away from my convention. Since I don't need CSS for now, I'll just create 3 JS files. So I'll create a search container. Okay, and then I'm going to create let's call it search form. So search form.js. Okay, and then I'm going to create a third one. It's going to be a result list.js. Okay, so my search container is going to be called from my app.js from that diagram, and my search container is going to have these 2 forms. Okay, my state is going to be maintained in my search form. Search container. So I'm going to create search container as class component. So let's go ahead and create a class component for this. So we'll say import React component from React. Okay, and then we will create our class component. We'll call it search container extends component, and that's going to be my class. Lifecycle method render is going to return, for now, just return a div. This is search container. Okay. Let's stub our next 2. So this is going to be search form, and this is going to be our function component because it's not going to have a state. I'm going to pass everything inside as a prop. So I'm going to move this. We will use our, oh, I forgot to do export. So export default search container. Okay. Search form, we'll use our arrow function. So const search form, okay, is equal to, it's going to receive a single argument, props. All right, and what does it do? It returns our JSX. So we will just say div this is results. Okay, and then export this out. Export default search form. All right. Similarly, create. Oh, this is the search form. Search form. Okay. Let's tab out our result as well. So this is going to be result list. All right. Result list and result list. Okay. So these are my three components. Search container is a class component. The other two are function components. Okay. Let's go ahead and complete our app.js. Let's remove this. Don't need this. And then from my diagram, I just need my search component. So I'm going to say import search container from search container. Okay, and then I will render search container here. Okay, and according to my diagram, my search container is going to have my search form. So let's go over here, and instead of doing this, let's go ahead and render our. So we will render a search form first, so that my input box shows up. Oops. Search form, and then my result list. Oh, it does that. Oh, that's nice. Let's try this again. So search form. Oh, there it is. Nice. All right. So these are imported, and this is how it should be. All right. So this is my diagram. App has search container. So app has search container. Then my search container has two components: search form and result list. Okay. Let's go ahead and run this. Npm start. Okay. Let's start the correct one. Ajax demo. Oh no, I did it in the wrong one. Okay, never mind. So we'll go back to okay. Should have a return statement. All right. So this is what I missed. Let's fix that. Return. Okay. Is that right? Okay. So here it is. So my search form should show up on the top, and then my result list. All right. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep it in the middle. That's fine. Okay. So let's go ahead and complete our search form. What we will do is we need a input box and a button. That's all. So let's go back to our search form. We will add a input box and a button. So let's add our form. Okay. Let's add our label. Okay. And label says search. And then let's add our input box. Input. Okay. Give it our same value, name, and everything. So we'll say name is equal to search. Then we're going to have our type, which is going to be text. So Okay. What else? Let's add a placeholder and then say search for a GIF. Okay. And then we need our value as well. Value is going to be something. Don't have that yet. All right. Let's add a last button very quickly. So we'll say button, and this is going to be put some text search. Okay. We need a on click method. So we'll say on click is equal to something, some on click method. All right, we'll come back and fill this up. So let's go back and see if it is this working. Value. Okay, so they don't like empty. Put it like this. It doesn't like click, so put it like this. Okay, so here's my search. Comes up with the form. All right, so that's one thing done. Let's go back and do the result. We will create a unordered list which shows up all our results. All right, so we will say unordered list, and this should have some kind of results. Li hard coded for now. All right, so we will have to loop through our results eventually. All right, so we have unordered list over here and shows up over here. All right, so let's get back to our search container. Before we move on to the search container, let's look at our Ajax call. So if you look at the documentation, look into FAQs. The first one is Ajax and APIs. Okay, so React does not have a native library built in. You can use any library that you want. So if you see the first one shows up Axios, so that's what we will use. All right, so npm install Axios, and we are going to use that to make our Ajax calls. Okay, the second thing that they're saying is when you make an API call, do it in your component did mount method. All right, do it in this lifecycle method in your class component. All right, so those are the two things to remember, and that's what we're going to do. Or your state should be set in your component did mount method and everything, so we need our component did mount. All right. So what I'm going to do first is we'll create a separate, we'll close this out for now. We will create a separate folder called utils, and we are going to create our API call over here. Just like in your project 2, remember our routes were kind of separated, but on the front end we will use export and then put our API call over here and then export that function outside. Okay, let's look at our Axios thing. So the first thing we will do is, let's go ahead and install Axios. npm I Axios. Okay, as this installs, let's go ahead and import Axios from Axios. Okay, kind of similar to our Node.js. Right, so in this case, let me get my URL, Giphy, Giphy, yeah, Giphy base URL. You can use the same keys that you have from your previous activity. I'm going to use mine. So this is going to be my URL, okay, and then this is going to be my API key, and I'm going to put my API key. Okay, I'm going to create a function which is going to make axios.get to this URL, and then I'm going to export the results back. All right. Remember our export default In this case, I'm going to create a function called search, all right, and then which is going to get this query, which is going to be what you are searching for. So, for example, if you search for cat, cat is going to come over here. I'm going to replace cat at the end, and then make that call. So I'm going to do axios dot get, okay, and the URL is going to be my base URL, okay, and then plus query, and then my API key. Okay, again, this is just the same axios get calls that we made. The only thing I did was I'm putting this inside a search function, then I'm going to call it outside this way. You don't have to do it. You can copy this line and put it in your component dot method component did mount. It's fine. The only thing is you will see kind of similar design pattern. We are kind of refactoring. We are kind of following the dry principle and making sure that our code for APIs are kind of separate. So that's why I'm kind of following the same design pattern. But you can simply do this and put it in your component did mount. You don't have to do this. Okay. So I'm going to return this. When I do a return, am I going to get the data back? Am I actually going to get my data back if I do a return from here? No, good. We know because this is a async call, so I'm going to get a promise back, so I need to use the then function and all that stuff. Okay. So let's go back to our state component, our search container, because that's where the state is going to be. And my component did mount method can only exist over here. Okay, it only exists in your class or your state method. So as a documentation we're saying, we will call our function in our component did mount method. Okay, so we will call our method API dot search. Okay, and we'll pass in our query, which we will obtain from when somebody types something in our search form, they're going to obtain that from there. Okay, so what we can do is, right now there is nothing, so we'll come back and fix that. Okay, remember, as I said, this is a uh, uh, async method, so you need to use the then function so that you can have everything. So we'll type that out dot search dot then. Okay, if there's any error, use the catch one. Let's say if there's any error, we'll use our arrow function. Okay, this is taking place of the anonymous function. So in previous time, I would do something like this and say error and console log that error. But since we are on arrow function, so you can replace this in error single parameter and then just console dot log error. Okay, we need to fill out these two things. But in our component did mount, we are making that Ajax call. Again, how do we make that Ajax call? We are using Axios, all right, and we are using the get method. That's how you would make an Ajax call in your React app. Okay, I have isolated this for good design pattern, but you can literally take this up and put it over here. Add these variables, it does the same thing. You'll have to add the dot then function, dot catch function, but it does the same thing. Okay, but in examples you will see that kind of this strategy being followed, so I'm kind of keeping it to the same convention. All right, now we're going to add our state variable. Okay, our state is going to have the search term and the results. Okay, again, these two components cannot have a state, so everything is going to be maintained in this component over here. Okay, so the first thing would be my search term, and the second is going to be my results. Okay, and results are going to be an array because when I make this API call, the images, I'm going to get multiple images. Alright, so I'm going to throw those images in my results array and then send it to my result list. Okay, so in this case, my search term is going to be this dot state dot search. Okay, and my then function, I'm going to set the state. So I'm going to get my result back from the axios.get Giphy. I'm going to use the arrow function. I'm going to say this dot set state. Okay, set state takes an object, and what am I setting? I'm setting my results to res dot data dot data. Okay, again, remember where is dot data coming from? This is coming from the Giphy API. I don't know if you guys remember from your homework. If not, go back and take a look at it. If you parse it, it comes in your data object. All right, so I'm pulling it from my Giphy API. I'm getting the search results in this method. All right, my results, I'm parsing it. I'm putting all whatever comes in into my from my Giphy API. I'm putting it into my results array. All right. Again, we don't have to console log this. I can go back, maybe look at the documentation to refresh memories for your Giphy API, but it should be coming in your data element. All right. I'm going to pause over here and see what questions you guys have before I build my other two components. Okay. So now I have my results. Let's start with the result list. What do I need to do? I need to pass these results in my result list component, and we'll pass it as props. So we'll call it results is equal to, how do I access my results array? This dot state dot results. Okay, so my result list is going to get a property called results, and it's going to have this array. All right. What about my search form? My search form should get a property called search, which will be the term that I'm searching for, and we will say this dot state dot search. Okay. All right. Two more things. What does my font requires? When somebody clicks this button over here, right? It should do something. So handle, and when somebody types into, let's see if it renders. Somebody types in over here, right? So I need two methods: handle input change and handle submit click. All right. So let's go ahead and put those methods over here. The first would be handle input change, and you can copy this from the previous activity that we just completed. Okay, it's going to be same as your previous one. Use the parentheses. Okay, and what does this do? Our const object destructuring. So we'll have our name, and then we'll have our value. Okay, and then we will access that using e.target. All right, and then we'll use our computed property name and set the state. Same as your previous example. So I'm going to set my state here. Then I'm going to say name value. Okay, you can literally copy paste from the example from the previous one. Handle input change. Somebody types something. We are saving it to our name variable. Okay, handle submit change or handle the button click. So you will say handle form submit. Same as your previous one. We'll get an event. First thing what we need to do is prevent default. So e.prevent default. Okay, and when somebody clicks it, you need to call this thing, right? You need to go back and search this API. Okay. Same code being called in two different places. We can put this out into a function so that we just have to call it once. So let's say search Giphy is going to get a query parameter, query, and then within this method, let's go ahead and copy our repeating code here. Okay. And in this case, we will just replace this with our query, and then we will call this method over here. So this dot search Giphy, and then when my component did mount, again, if you remember from the life cycle, component did mount comes up when the first time your component comes up. Okay, so when the first time it comes up, we can set some default string that it goes and searches for it. So it's going to call this method search for cats. Right. Next time when you click on the search button, we can call this method again. Okay, so this was repeating, so I just took it out and put it into a function. All right, but of course I don't. This cannot be hard coded now. So what do I need to pass in? I need to pass in my state this dot state dot search, whatever somebody searches. Okay. Again, the only thing I did was yes. What is it? Parentheses. Oh, you are saying the same thing? Yeah, it's redundant, but I'm doing it because I don't know, for some reason it doesn't look nice to me. But this is totally redundant. All right, you actually don't need a parentheses over here. All right, but you guys are going to be front-end JavaScript developers, so maybe don't put parentheses. But that's how JavaScript people do. So. All right. So again, what I did was I was calling this function more than once. I just put it into a function and I'm just calling it at one line. That's all I did. All right. First one, why is it being hard-coded? Because this is the component that comes up the first time. If you don't do it, it's going to show you an empty screen. All right. By default, what it is going to do? It is going to call cats and then make an API call, get all the components, all the data for the cats from the Giphy API. Okay. Next time, if you have your handle form submit, when you click this form, it is going to go ahead and search this with whatever the search term you have entered. Okay. So in my search form, I need to pass in these methods handle input change, and I will pass this dot handle input change method, and then handle form submit. We'll pass in this dot handle form submit. Okay. I'm not sure if you guys did a previous activity, but what is happening over here? All of these are being passed as properties. So two things to learn over here. Properties, we can send properties which are strings, numbers, booleans. We can also send properties which are actually functions. So what is happening over here? We are passing in a function which is going to go into search form as a property. Okay, so it's not limited to string, boolean, numbers. You can actually pass in functions as well. So what is going to happen over here? You are passing this function, and then you are passing in these two functions to our search form. Okay. So if you go back to our search form, we will go ahead and complete this. In my value, I'm going to receive the props. So this is going to be, oops, shouldn't have removed this is going to be props dot search. And while search, again, go back over here, you will see we are passing the search term with this property. So I'm using search. Okay. This is going to have the on change event. Okay, and this is also being passed into us by properties as, let's go back over here, handle input change. So I'm going to, okay, so this is a function. The above one is a string. When the click happens, the same thing, you will say props dot handle form submit. Oops, this one, and your handle form submit shows up. Okay. Have I taken the state out of this input? I have. It's not a state, but when you assign this to something else, you are overriding the value. So you're making this a control component. The same concept applies over here. The value is going to be set from this case. It's not going to be set by input tag itself. Okay. So this is a control component because the value is being set by us in our React app. Okay, I think this should be good for the search term. In result, we are passing in this data as an array. What do we have to do? We have to loop through this using our map function and then show this result. So let's quickly write our map function. So this is going to be props.results. Okay. Let me know if you see a syntax error. So the first argument is the actual result, right? So we'll say result, and we are outputting our LIs. Okay. Remember, LI requires key and value. Okay. So the first thing we need to put is our key. Otherwise, you're going to get that error that we saw on Saturday. Result.id. Okay, my result set is coming from my Giphy. It has an ID. So put that as an ID, and then we need a image. So let's use our image tag. What is it? Alt. It's going to be result dot title. We'll see if none of them render, then we'll console log our API results to see what is actually coming back. And our source is going to be result dot images dot original dot URL. Okay. Again, I don't exactly remember any of these, so there might be a issue that this is not going to work. We will console log and see it. But from our previous activities that we did and when we were doing Axios, I looked it up, and this was the object that we were using. Might work, might not, but we'll have to console log and see if this is correct. Okay. But what is going to happen? Ideally, it should get a array, and then I'm looking through this array. I'm showing allies with my images, and it should have a key, and it should show these images. Okay. Well, that didn't work. Oh, because I'm not running my npm start. So if this is correct, I should see some cat giffies show up. Again, why? Because I'm using it on my component with mount. Hopefully it's making an Axios call. All right, result.list. Expected an assignment of function call instead. So let's see if help me debug this. Line number 17. Oh. You guys see any issues? It says line number 17, which is actually empty, right? 7 result is expected an assignment of function call. Is my function component correct? Do I see any issues? I have a UL I'm looping through. My UL, it completes over here. Results.map, result, shows this li is complete. Image tag, which is empty, which is okay. It should have the source. Do you see anything? Let's look at our console. Do you find it? Let's look at our components. See if you can see something over here. So this is my search form. Okay, that looks okay. My results. Okay, I'm getting the results. So let's see what is wrong over here. Is it, you have the wrong, so there's the ID. Okay, and what is the other one that I was using? Is it result.title? Is there a result.title over here? Okay, result.title is there. Result.images.original. Let's find it. Result.images and then dot original. That's not what's here, right? So that's the problem. Oh no, there it is. Original dot URL. Oh, there's the URL. Okay. What is it? Is image itself what? Oh well, this is JSX. It should have a end tag. Yeah, I mean, it's you can do this. I don't know if that makes a. It might. Let's see. No, still the same. Anything else? Line 7? It says column 7. I thought it was column 7. Okay, line 7. Oh, okay, okay. Okay. So what's wrong with column? Something is wrong with that. Okay. Do I have to debug everything? Come on. So key is result.id. What is wrong over here? I don't see anything wrong on line number 7. Line 7 and 17. Okay. So line 7 and column number 17. This one. Oh, is it these? Oh, these things. This is a single line, so either I have to do a return here, okay, or I have to remove these things because this is a single line. That's what the problem is. So let's add this up then. Okay. You guys see the issue? If you put curly braces over here, it means you have to have a return statement. Remember in JSX, in our arrow functions, if you put a curly braces, this means you have to put a return statement. But this all is a single element, a single line. So I didn't have a return over there. That's why it wasn't working. And that's okay. Silly question. How do I close this? So I was able to debug, but I cannot close this. Oh, there it is. Okay. I was like, wow. All right. So my component did mount works because I can see my tag goofies. So let's see if I search for, is this working? Okay, that one's working. Cool. That was a fast search. Did somebody already search? It's like in cache. Let's see. Kittens. Okay. Alright, there's a few things that are missing. That's why it shows these things, but that's okay. Oh, Jedi kittens. Alright, so quickly recap. We started with our app component. Okay, our app component only has a single component called search container. Right, my search container has two child components, search form and results. Okay, my search form just has a input box and a button label as well that you can see on the screen, and my result is actually pulling out these images and showing them as a list. Okay. Um, my search container is the one that has all the state and everything, making an API calls. Remember, component inbound, this is where you would make your API call. Okay. This is the reason when you load your page the first time, it always shows you the cat images because I have hard-coded cats over here. Okay. Again, this is only called once when your component mounts, and that's it, right? But when you type in something, we want to see different results. So for that, what we did in our submit button, we are saying make the search to Giphy again, and this time whatever the user has typed in. Okay. This is our handle input change button, submit button. Once you have the results, you send it to our results. We loop through those results, set the key, and then set whatever the results are. Okay. You saw we ran into some issues. How did we debug? We looked at the components from the React one. If you haven't installed that Chrome extension, I would highly recommend it. It shows you all the properties and everything that is being passed in. Okay, if you're trying to debug a React application, this is the way to go. Okay, it shows you all the data that is being passed in each component. So this one is this, result list is getting results, search form is getting these two functions and a search. Right now it's empty because we haven't typed anything. So type in something, search, and then you get these properties. Yes. If you Google React Developer Tool Chrome extension, React Chrome Developer Tool, any one of those, the first one will show up. It's called React Developer Tool Chrome extension. Okay, it's actually from Facebook. So they came up with this so that it will help you debug any of the React components. Okay. All right. I know this was like too much, but to be honest, you will see that I spent a considerable amount of time. I did live coding just so that you guys can see how we started and what we all did. If you slept through it, you missed it. I would highly recommend going back and looking at it and see how we came to this conclusion. Okay. Any questions? All right. So this is there. Again, I would highly recommend keep this in mind. Keep this design in mind. And then if you want to practice, come up with this application on your own, right? Keep this in mind. You have an app, you have these three containers. The first container is a parent, the next two are child, and then go ahead and code this out after the class, whenever you're doing these activities. Code this out on your own and see if you can come up with the same one. Of course, I will upload this, but this is a good practice. Keep that design in mind and see if you can come up with this one. You can add Bootstrap, make it even more fancy. I didn't add any of those. You can add make those text boxes a little more fancier. Okay? All right. So instead of this activity, what I want you guys to do is do the next one on your own by reading as well. So the next one is called conditional rendering, and the activity is number 4. Okay, I want you guys to look at this documentation. It's not as complicated. It's all the if conditions that we have already studied. I want you to look at the conditional rendering and look at activity number 4. Okay, see if you can complete that activity. So conditional rendering in your activity refers to if you have different pages in your app which you're going to have, how do you render, how do you go to different pages? You will see you have a profile container, it has the state and everything. It is rendering different pages. Yes.
What if you that I didn't hurry.
Which one did you do?
I didn't hurry.
We're doing 4.
So hold up.
But you did 4? That's good. Oh, sorry. 3.
Yeah, three.
Okay. We're doing 4.
I'll go.
Anyone able to render the home page? So what should happen is when you click this, it should go to different pages. Right now it doesn't work. So the hint is based on this dot state our current page render the appropriate component here. Okay, so on click you're going to render a component. If you look into your pages folder, how many components do you have over there? You should have, I think, 4. So all of these are components about your contact home. Okay, so anytime somebody clicks on this link, the correct component should come up. So when I click about, my about component should show up, which is this one over here, right? It has this text. When I click contact, this should show up, and so on and so forth. Okay. If you look at the comment, it says changes would be in portfolio container to start with. Any ideas? So if you look at conditional rendering page, we have to use our if statements over here. That's all you have to do. But the only thing is if statements are JavaScript, right? So it has to be wrapped around uh, curly braces, and then you're going to write if conditions. If you're going to check this, anyone? Still no idea? How is the overall app working? So I have my portfolio container which has the state. Does any other component have a state, or all of them are function components? You guys look through the other components and see if there was any other component that was having the state, or is it the only one? If you look through it, this should be the only one that has the state. All right, and how many components are there? Actually, if you look at it, there are one, two, three, four, five components, and then the state one. So none of these components actually have a state. All of these are function components. This is another good example that I was talking about lifting the state up. So what this example is doing is only one component is maintaining the state, the top component, and it is making sure every other component gets properties. That's what's going on over here. Maybe that will help to complete this one. So all the states are being set over here. What is the state maintaining? It is maintaining pages. So for example, this is my initial state, right? Line number 10. When my page loads, that should be my initial state, right? My home. So it is setting the string to the word home. Okay? When you click this one, where is the state changing? How is this changing? When I click something. You guys know which function that is? Handle page change. If you see the function handle page change is the one that is updating the state. Okay? That's one thing. Now, where is this function going? It's going inside the nav tabs as a property. So nav tab is the one that is actually calling this function. And what is it passing? It is passing a parameter called page. Okay? So there is a function called handle page change that is expecting a argument called page, which is going to be a string. Why? Because this is a string, right? This is my state has this. So it has to be home or something else. Okay? And who is calling that method? Navtabs is calling that method. So you will have to open up navtabs and see what they are passing in as a page. So if you open up navtabs, okay, navtab is on click, right? It has bunch of LIs, right, which is corresponding to these. These are actually LIs. They kind of look like navigation bar, but these are LIs if you look at navtabs. Okay, and which in each LI they have an on-click function that is calling handle page change, which exists in our portfolio container. And what is it doing? It is passing these string. Each one of them corresponds to a string: home, about, blog, contact. Okay, so when you click on any one of these, it calls the onClick function and passes in a string with the correct page name. Okay, that's first thing. So it calls this method which contains on over here. So this method is going to receive the page. What does it do? It sets the state to the new whatever the click page comes in. So if you click about, it's going to set the current page as about. If you click the contact, it is going to set the current page as contact. Okay? The only problem is in your render function, those are not rendering. So your state is correct. Your current page is always going to have the correct one. What you have to do is you have to render this thing over here, this space over here. So this is my first component. My second component over here is not being rendered. Okay, this is where the conditional rendering comes in. So if you look at the documentation, conditional rendering basically means a bunch of if conditions. So what am I checking over? I'm saying if this dot state dot current page is home, then what do? I render the home component. And how do I render a component? By calling the component itself, right? So you will say home like this. Okay. What about the next one? So you will have a bunch of if conditions where they are going to render each one of them. Why is it giving me an error here? What am I missing? Let's see. Oops. Okay. This is good. Okay. Right? It's going to be something similar. See if you can, I don't know what's the, if you guys can figure out if my if condition, why is it not rendering this correctly? No, I don't know if it's giving me an error. Let's go back over here and see. Unexpected token if. Did anybody go through your documentation and see if this is the correct way? Try this out and see if you can figure out the error. So the error is unexpected token if. So the first thing that I see over here is that they have wrapped this into a function and then they are returning each of the components. Okay? We can do something similar. We can create a function over here. We can say render page, okay, using arrow function, okay, and have all our conditions over here. So we can say if this dot current if dot state dot current page is home, then I am going to return home component. Okay, this is just one condition, and then if it isn't like this, we can call our function over here. Okay. This dot render page. Okay, give this a try. What is happening? When this renders, I'm calling a function over here, which should actually return home. So home should come over here and embed itself. So let's give it a try and see if this is working, or do we still have an error? Okay, looks like this is working. So my home page shows up the first time. Okay, now my next ones are not working, so we can do something similar. We can have more conditions, or you can change it to a switch actually. So you can say else if this dot state dot current page is about, then what should happen? If I think I have the condition else. Looks like I forgot how to write an if statement. Yes. If this says about, then what do I need to do? I need to return my about component. Okay. So let's go back here again. Home, about, and my about page shows up. Okay. So same thing for the other two. So we will say else if this dot state dot current page is equal to blog, then return blog, and then else if this dot state dot current page is contact, then return contact. Okay, let's see, home, about shows up, blog, contact, all of these are working with proper navigation. And just remove this one. So if the first ones are not matched, then it is always going to return the current one. So home, let's refresh, home, about, contact. Okay, so this is what conditional rendering means, that based on different conditions you are rendering a different component. Okay, if you were just using pure rag, this is how you would create some kind of a navigation. All right. What about, you see over here, these are the bonus one is how do you make it active, the links over there. Like if I click a link, how do I tell if it is active or not? Like how do I make it active? So if you go to your nav tabs over here, you will see that they're assigning a bootstrap class of nav link. Okay, but what I want to do is, if this is active, I want to add a nav link active class. Okay, so this is also kind of like a conditional rendering over here as well, that by default, if I'm not on that page, then navlink class is fine. But when I'm on that page, I want to change this class and add an active over there. Let's go back over here. So the class name navlink is fine, but when it is active, I want to add the word active over here. Okay. Again, I would highly recommend go look into inspec and see what are the properties that are coming to each one of these containers. Okay, so your nav tabs is getting a property current page, handle page, but it has the property that whichever you click, you will get that property over here. Oops. So I'm getting blog because I'm on blog over here. If you click contact, your nav tab is going to get a property called current page contact. You can use this property to change the class names, to change your CSS here as well. What I mean is you can have a conditional rendering over here as well. So what you can say is remove this and basically say if my props dot current page, okay, it's in this props over here. Current page is home, okay. Then what do I need to do? I am going to render nav link active. If it is not current page, then just render nav link. Okay, now what happens? The class name is going to be dynamically changed. So if it is home page, it's going to render this one. If it is not, it's going to render this one. So now let's go back over here. You see it already changed. So if I'm on about, my home page goes to unlinked. If I click over here, it kind of changes it. So you can have the same change in every class over here. Make sure to change this to about. This is going to become contact. So let's just quickly update this. This is contact. This is blog. And this is about. Okay, so based on these things, it is going to render. Refresh if I go to about, changes the CSS, changes the CSS. So you can render the CSS based on some conditions as well. Okay, so if you have multiple components, multiple pages, this is how you would do if you were just using React. But here's the problem. Copy this and then open it into a new tab. If I paste, I'm saying localhost / about, but when you get to this page, which page showed up? Home page. Okay, that's not correct. So if I have contact, right, this is correct. If I copy contact and if I open up a new tab, which page should show up? It should show up contact page, but what happens? It only shows the home page. Why is this happening? That's the last question. Why do you think it only shows up the home page every single time your page comes up, even though the link is something else? Excellent, because the state is set, your initial state is set to home page, that's why it shows up. Okay, is there a workaround for that? There is not in React. Okay, just to give you a heads up, we'll continue this on Thursday, but this is why there is a library called React Router. Okay, take a look at React Router. We will talk about it on Thursday, but exactly for this, we have React Router. What does React Router do? It creates these routes for you, and then you can render your components based on those routes. Okay, please make sure to take a look at React Router. Of course, do the activities first. If you get to it, take a look at React Router. On Thursday, I'm going to talk about this third-party one. All right. All right. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, that's all for today.